This story is reverberating around Westminster, Ryan. Tell us what you can tell us about what you know.
It seems like one senior Tory ex-cabinet minister, Simon Clarke, is likely to come out very shortly, actually, and say there needs to be a new prime minister. He's saying that Rishi Sunak should no longer be in number 10. Simon Clarke was a big supporter of Liz Truss. He's a fully paid-up member, and he's been picking holes in Rishi Sunak and his leadership for a long time. But the fact that someone has actually come out and said this during an election year, just a few months out from an election, is tantamount to how much disquiet there is in the Conservative Party. And one of the reasons is they're so far behind in those opinion polls. When you're polling 20, 25%...
And it's getting worse. Every week it's a new low, isn't it?
Exactly. And there's problems. The Rwanda scheme hasn't got off. The economy's, faltering or teetering. It's not on going gangbusters. So, there's a lot of disquiet. You can see why he's done it.
I'm just glad to see that the politicians have finally worked out that my show has moved from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. because the show always used to start with a breaking story at 10 o'clock in the morning because something would always happen. People kept resigning during my show. Emma, I mean, it is surprising that they've waited this long, but Simon Clarke is a part of this new movement which has been started by Liz Truss called PopCon. I don't know if you've heard about this. They're launching it on February the 6th. I actually happened to see Liz Truss quite recently, and she was very excited about it, telling me this is a new part of the Conservative Party taking back the Conservative movement, effectively, saying that basically the Tory party's been taken over by a load of wet sort of One Nation types.
So we'll have 6 families rather than 5 families.
I presume so, yeah. Or maybe they're coagulating 2 of the families or 4 of the families.
I'm sure they'll mock up. Yeah. Well, one wonders if there's a new leader, would they call a general election immediately? Would they wait? Would they drag on? I mean, this whole thing is just descending from sort of farce into absolute mania.
Right. Well, I mean, it started. I mean, tonight it was your colleague Harry Cole that sort of slipped out and the word that something was afoot. Quickly followed by Nadine Dorries retweeting it, saying, "Here we go."
This is the plot that I wrote about.
I mean, there is this kind of psychodrama, Leon, that they seem to be creating for themselves with every day. It's not as if there's not enough going on. I mean, we're supposed to be talking about the Red Sea and the missiles being fired on the Houthis. We're supposed to be talking about Rwanda and whether the Lords is doing the right thing. Instead, they've got another kind of psychodrama on their hands.
They have, and it's the same old Tories, really, isn't it? Not much has changed.
No.
But I think that what number 10 are going to be looking at is whether or not Simon Clarke has got the backing of other Conservatives who will now come out and gather some momentum behind this anti-Rishi movement. But the question still remains, if not Rishi, then who?
Yeah.
And I think there is still a question mark about who the person would be to lead the Conservatives into the next general election. And if we do get to a point where the momentum is against Rishi Sunak, perhaps he could pull a general election quicker than we thought and go to the country and say, well, actually, I'm going to be Prime Minister.
Yeah.
I'll let the country have their say. So
that never goes well, does it? Let the country decide. The country usually goes the other way, doesn't it?
Yeah, normally. And I think it's going to be very difficult for Rishi Sunak in particular to make that vision, make the case for his vision for the country and to be given more time.
Right.
And would anyone want to take over this poison chalice at this point when they are lagging so calamitously far behind?
Yeah. I mean, the Tories I speak to at the moment are pretty much, confined to those who think they're just going into oblivion for a while and they're hoping to come out of it, with something to show for themselves, and maybe in a few years' time Labour will have screwed it up to such an extent that they'll walk back in. But I haven't met any Tories that think they've got a dog's chance in hell.
No, they think the game's up. The only people who do think they've got half a chance is those serving in number 10.
Yeah.
And that's
This is sort of bunker mentality time.
It's set in, and you realise that the closer you get to that election, it's just going to get worse and worse. But do you want to have someone like Rishi Sunak who's going to keep you in the game maybe in 5 years' time? Do you want a fighting chance in 5 years? Or do you just want to blow up the whole party, lose, be left with a rump of 150
Well, I think
seats?
that's Liz Truss's plan. I mean, I think she genuinely believes that the Tory party and maybe the system needs some kind of a kind of explosion or a revolution.
Is it the Italian job? Let's blow the bloody doors off.
Yeah.
It's just
you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off and then they completely wrecked the whole van. I mean, that was the problem. They used a bit too much gelignite.
I knew you'd know that line,
And, it's just an incredible situation because this government seems to be completely stalled. There's quite a lot of important stuff going on. You know, there's the Israeli situation still. Russia's still happening. You've got a new president coming in America. You know, you've got, Ukraine
in the Red Sea.
still going on. Yeah, I mean...
Well, Rishi Sunak will be furious about this. He's, had a phone call with President Biden last night trying to look like...
Do you think Biden remembers it?
No, well, good point. Trying to look like he's that sort of leader on the world stage. He was out in Ukraine the other week delivering $2.5 billion worth of financial aid to
He's
Ukraine.
been making some quite strong noises on behalf of Israel as well, saying that, there can be no peace without the hostages all being released and Hamas being removed, basically.
And his statement in Parliament today was quite interesting. We saw a different tone from Rishi Sunak. Gone was the children's TV presenter, and here was this sort of statesman, as Ryan says, trying to look as if he's the guy on the world stage standing up for British interests. So he's definitely got a plan. I'm just not convinced that the country are going to be convinced by it because it's not authentic. I don't think that's who he is.
Well, he says he's got a plan, and he says that Labour don't have a plan. But, I mean, there's plans and there's plans, isn't there? I mean, it's all very well having a plan, but if the plan doesn't work...
Well, he keeps saying stick with the plan, as though, A, we know what the plan is, and B, it's working. Well, it's not.
And what is this country... Do you know what it is?
Well, no.
No, I don't.
And I do know that the doctors are still, none of that has been resolved. We've got an NHS that's falling apart at the seams. We've got ongoing rail strikes across the public sector. We've got... despair, and we've got immigration problems, education problems, problems everywhere.
Well,
and potholes.
And potholes. I mean, just to add insult to injury. And local councils all going belly up. In fact, some people saying that local councils may never be the same again. They may not survive this particular financial round.
Students suing their teachers about, prayer bans. I mean, just the whole system.
It is incredible.
He's flapping. He's got his 5 pledges, and he's flapping, over those. The inflation one, OK, give him, a tick against that. But every time he's just getting distracted, whether it's, globally
well, he's managed
or it's
to take the Tory
domestically.
party, which unfairly, I think, was castigated when this trust was in and Kwasi Kwarteng was in. I think that all happened far too quickly. Maybe there wasn't enough thought given to what they wanted to do, but I think they were given no time at all to do it. But we're actually worse off now, aren't we, than we were then?
Definitely we are worse off. And I think the other big problem for the Conservatives is we're worse off after 13 years. And I think that's the big problem.